Greetings everyone, this is Professor Jeff Wilkerson at Luther College bringing you what to look for in the night sky, this time for the week of October 4th, 2021. That's right, we've turned it over into October. And as I often do, we're going to look at stuff that I've been watching in the night sky as I've been taking data, as I've been hanging out looking. Kind of stuff we've seen before, new ideas wrapped into old ideas. And look at a few stars that are very prominent in the south-southeast just after dark right now, for those of you at mid-northern latitudes where I am. So the first thing you see when you look to the south as it's getting dark, Jupiter is the brightest object. We've got a busy looking board up there, which is really interesting because this is a pretty wide open patch of sky that we're looking at, big patch of sky. So today the board represents a big swath of sky that we're going to talk about. And so as you look toward the south-southeast as it gets dark, Jupiter is the brightest object out there. So you've got Jupiter glowing very, very brightly. Hopefully you've been watching Jupiter. It's easy to see as the brightest object out there. Not too far to the right of Jupiter, to the west of Jupiter, is Saturn. About 17 degrees, I think it is right now. So maybe somewhere between 1 and 2 fist width. This is what we do. We've been practicing this. Hold your arm out, your fist out at arm's length, and it's about 10 degrees across there. And we're looking at about 1.5 of those, maybe a little more than that, closer to 2 of those. That's Jupiter to Saturn over this direction. Now, I'm sure we've talked about this before too, but I'm impressed with the stars that I can see around there when I have decently dark skies. This star is pretty close to Jupiter. It's been pretty close to Jupiter for a long time now. Jupiter doesn't move that quickly against the background stars. And so every night I see that star and think, well, that's really impressive that Jupiter's been so close to this reasonably bright star, not a super bright star. Deneb Algaty, that is. This whole thing is in Capricorn. So Capricorn contains Jupiter and Saturn here, and very close to Jupiter, just below Jupiter, and to the east a little bit is Deneb Algaty, one of the brighter stars in Capricorn. Capricorn is not a bright constellation, so this is your chance to learn some of these stars. So go out, see if you can see Jupiter and identify this star. Move across to Saturn. If you got a small telescope, by all means, check out Jupiter and Saturn. You could spend all night just observing the Galilean moons of Jupiter and looking for the bands on the surface and looking at the rings of Saturn and Titan. Its moon. And so definitely go out and check out these things. But above Saturn, we've got a couple of stars up this direction that are also in Capricorn. So we have a chance to see some other stars across this direction. Capricorn sort of makes a shape down this way, sort of a V shape that contains Jupiter and Saturn right now. Now, another V shape I think it's about 8 degrees from Saturn and this star right here is, if we go up and make a V this direction, we've got M73 and M72, 2 star clusters. So we've talked about star clusters off and on quite a bit. Well, we like star clusters. We like to observe star clusters. I like to study fields of view that have star clusters in them and count short period eclipsing binary stars, but that's a different thing. So M72 is an open star cluster, M73 is a globular star cluster. Very different. If you can find these in a small telescope or even binoculars, you can tell that difference. M73, hundreds of thousands of stars, pretty distant, compact, glowing, hard to see the individual stars. M72, lots of individual glittering stars that you can see. So just sort of about at the vertex of an isosceles triangle right here, that V that we see right there, from these stars in Capricorn. Interestingly enough, M72 and M73 are actually across the border in Aquarius. So Aquarius stretches on out this direction, and M72, 73 just cross that border into Aquarius. Now, the other stars you can look for. This is, I think of Altair up here. Altair is the southernmost star in the summer triangle. We looked at Vega last week at the video. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the Lyra video from last week and check out what we were looking at in Vega up this direction. Vega's on up off the board this way. And so I think of Altair as relatively southern. So for those of us at mid-northern latitudes, again, here I am at 43 degrees north latitude. I'd have to look south to see Altair, and it's definitely further south. Quite a bit, noticeably further south than the other stars of the summer triangle, Deneb and Vega. And so I think of this as a kind of a southern star. Just how not southern it is what you can see. How much of the sky there is south of there is what this is really impressed. What's impressed me this week as I've been watching this group. So Altair is shining up here, and we've been talking about right triangles some, and this is more or less a right triangle from Jupiter over to Saturn up to Altair. So if you go over this direction and walk up, you find Altair as the next brightest object you come to, moving north from the Jupiter-Saturn line. Altair is probably, I've forgotten now what this is. I think this is about 35 degrees, maybe 36 degrees from Jupiter up to Altair. So we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 fist widths up that direction. So we're starting to get twice what this separation is up this direction. So we're starting to get to be a big swath of sky, and you realize Jupiter and Saturn are quite a bit further south than Altair. Now, intellectually, I know that. I recognize that Jupiter and Saturn, and they're in Capricorn, they're going to go through Sagittarius. You know, they're in constellations that are pretty far south, and so I recognize that Altair is going to be quite a bit north here. But to actually see it this week, to actually go out and see this vast swath of sky that's up there is impressive. Now, while you're doing that, you should check out the constellation of Aquila where Altair is. I think of it as a diamond. There's a small star next to Altair that you can see, a fainter star, I should say, next to Altair that you can see pretty well. But you can also typically see this diamond shape. It looks kind of like a baseball diamond. If that's second base and that's home plate, it's squished first to third just a little bit. So you see it's flattened out this direction, and that diamond, so that diamond of Aquila, you can practice seeing that constellation up this direction. Now, this time of year, I've told you this before, and I'll tell you this again. I'll tell you every week. You just keep watching, just keep repeating. Why not? I also like to see. I'm impressed by the bright star Fomalhaut, which is really the southernmost bright star I can see with my naked eye, and it's another 20-some degrees south of Jupiter. So it's almost on a line. There's almost a line that connects Fomalhaut to Altair up this direction. And Jupiter falls just to the right of that line, just to the west and south of that line that connects Fomalhaut to Altair up this way. Again, 30-some degrees, 36 degrees, 22 degrees, something like that. So we're talking about almost 60 degrees of sky from up here. Horizon to horizon, that's 180 degrees. So we're talking about a third of the sky we can see from south further north up this direction. And so Fomalhaut, this very southern star, you're going to see it now as we get through October. October is the time of year to look at this. And probably when it's just getting dark for me, I can't see this right now very well. You have to have a pretty good southern horizon if you're as far north as I am. And so I can't see it very well, but by 9 o'clock, it's pretty visible in the night sky, pretty easy. By 10 o'clock, it's even better. So at 9 or 10 o'clock at night for me, this is a great thing to be observing. And to get a sense of just how not south Altair is. It is south if you're comparing it to something like Deneb and Vega. It's not south if you're comparing it to Jupiter and Saturn, and it's really not south if you're comparing it to Fomalhaut. So you can see this vast swath of sky. That's what you got this week. This is a great thing to watch. Go out, identify Jupiter and Saturn, look at the stars of Capricorn that are around Jupiter and Saturn. Pay attention to a few of those stars. You got your binoculars or your telescope. Go out and see if you can find the star clusters M72 and M73, one open, one globular. Then work your way on up to Altair and make sure you can find the stars around Altair, and then drop all the way back down to the south for Fomalhaut. And you've got a great observing week ahead. I hope it is a great observing week for everybody. Have a good week, and we'll have something new for you next week. Thank you.